Chapter 1. The Goodbye Gift. Naomi didn't cry when she packed her office. She didn't even pause. Her desk was already neat, not because she knew this was coming, but because she never believed in getting too comfortable. And that, ironically, was part of the problem. Reed Halverson liked his executives loud, brash, and endlessly flattering. Naomi, she was none of those things. She was precise, disciplined, a strategist, and for 2 years, she'd helped triple the valuation of Halverson Tech. Didn't matter. Not when Reed decided she lacked fire. "I just think you're better suited for operational roles," he had said over lunch, stirring his espresso like he was auditioning for a mentorship podcast. "You're incredible, Naomi. But there's something to be said for raw hunger, that gut-level ambition. You could work on that." She nodded, expression unreadable. "Maybe take a break," he continued. "Travel. Invest in yourself. You've earned that." What he meant was, "You've plateaued. You don't make me feel like a visionary anymore, and I need someone who does." What she heard was, "You're not the type of woman I picture at the top." When she handed in her resignation, carefully worded to protect her equity and avoid a messy HR skirmish, he looked almost pleased, as if he'd orchestrated some sort of graceful exit, as if it hadn't been a shove in slow motion. On her final day, Reed stopped by her glass-walled office with a farewell envelope. "Just a little thank you," he said, flashing his signature half-smile. "You've done amazing things here. I'm sure you'll land somewhere great. And who knows, maybe one day you'll even start your own firm. Really test that ambition." She took the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, clipped to a glossy thank you card, embossed with the company's logo. "Naomi, never doubt your talent. Just don't be afraid to dream bigger. You're capable of more. Be bold. Be ambitious. Reed." She folded the card, smoothed the crease, didn't say a word, but the fire Reed claimed she lacked, he'd just lit the match. Chapter 2. Unbothered. Naomi didn't do sabbaticals. She didn't find herself on a beach in Tulum or disappear into the mountains to journal about healing. She worked, not out of desperation, out of design. 2 weeks after leaving Halverson Tech, she signed a 6-month lease on a shoebox-sized office in a high-rise with aging elevators and excellent soundproofing. The carpet was industrial gray. The view was mostly HVAC units and pigeons. But the light hit just right in the mornings, and no one interrupted her. She brought one framed photo, her parents on the front steps of their first restaurant, and placed it beside her monitor. Her father once told her, "The ones who whisper always outlast the ones who yell." She never forgot that. Her inbox, once clogged with team updates and eager-driven FYIs, was now pristine. Just cold outreach, spreadsheets, and slow-burning opportunity. She started small, vetting founders who'd been overlooked by bigger firms. Sharp people with unpolished decks, but terrifying clarity. She knew what to look for. She'd been them. She still was. And she knew what to avoid. She'd sat through enough board meetings to recognize inflated pitches when she saw them. She passed on companies chasing buzzwords and instead backed 2 founders building enterprise tools no one would understand for another year, maybe 2. By month 5, they were already outperforming projections. She called the firm Chen and Vega Capital, knowing full well there was no Vega. But it played well in rooms full of men who assumed she wasn't alone. Let them picture someone louder behind the curtain. Naomi never corrected them. She didn't need to. Her returns spoke louder than her business card. 12 months in, her fund was small but solid. No splashy billboards, no vanity headlines, just growth. Measured, sustainable, quietly lethal. Then one evening, while scanning a startup roundup over dinner, she saw a familiar name, Halverson Tech. She paused mid-bite. The article was brief. Reed's company had recently lost a major enterprise contract and was now shopping for late-stage funding. Quietly, urgently. The tone was diplomatic. Restructuring, exploring partnerships. But Naomi knew the language. They were bleeding. She closed the article, didn't smile, didn't gloat. She poured another glass of wine and opened her CRM. A name had just jumped onto her radar. A third-party broker reaching out about a legacy SAS platform seeking creative capital infusion. She didn't respond right away. She let them wait. Not because she was playing hard to get, because she was deciding just how much she wanted to own. Chapter 3. Reed's pitch. The deck came in on a Thursday morning. Naomi almost skipped it. The subject line was vague. Series D opportunity, confidential. And the attachment? Just another bloated pitch deck dressed up in venture speak. But when her analyst dropped a note, CEO has name recognition. Worth a look? Naomi clicked, and there it was, the Halverson Tech logo. Polished, hollow, still trying to look more like a legacy than a liability. She didn't flinch, just opened the file and scrolled. Page after page of sanitized desperation. Buzzwords stacked on projections. Phrases like momentum reinvigoration, mid-tier verticals, and expansion-resistant headwinds. The kind of language that says, we're in trouble, but we're still pretending it's strategy. And on the final slide, a request for bridge funding. Urgent, quiet, flexible in terms of equity. Naomi set the tablet down. 2 years ago, Reed Halverson had handed her a goodbye card with a condescending smile and a note about being more ambitious. Now, he was shopping survival capital like a man trying to delay his own obituary. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could have passed it off, delegated it to her partners, let someone else take the call. But Naomi wanted to see it herself. She wanted to look him in the eye. So she responded personally. We're intrigued. Let's schedule a call next week. Happy to hear the vision directly. N. Chen. The video call opened right on time. Reed appeared on screen in a crisp white button-down, collar slightly open, hair styled like he still had a personal assistant. His smile was immediate, practiced. Appreciate you jumping on, he said. We've had a ton of inbound interest, but wanted to prioritize strategic investors, people who know what it means to build, not just bankroll. Naomi didn't speak, just nodded. He didn't recognize her, not immediately. He was too busy talking. His co-founder, a guy named Jared, launched into the pitch. Operational costs, product market traction, loss of a major enterprise client, and a quiet but temporary cash crunch. They framed it as a pivot, a reinvention. Naomi heard panic. When Jared pulled up the financials, she didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. Everything she suspected was confirmed in the margin notes and language they avoided. They were bleeding talent. Their runway was closer to 3 months than 6. And internal morale? Sliding. Fast. Reed tipped the reins again near the end. What we're offering isn't just a stake, he said. It's a seat at the table. Real influence. We're not looking for passive capital. We want partners who believe in where we're going. Naomi leaned slightly closer to the camera. And where is that exactly? Reed smiled. Straight to acquisition. 18-month timeline. We just need a firm who knows how to navigate scale. She paused, studied him. That same smile, that same tone, that same man who once told her to dream bigger. But now? He didn't even remember her face. We'll run the numbers, she said calmly, and be in touch. Reed squinted. Wait, have we met? Naomi tilted her head, lips just barely curving, not properly. Then she clicked leave meeting and let the silence do the rest. Chapter 4. Conditions of interest. The offer Naomi sent wasn't warm. It was clinical, ice cold, designed to sting. A turn sheet dressed like a lifeline, but engineered to test every fracture in Reed's ego. She listed Chen and Vega Capital as the lead investor, willing to inject $3 million in strategic capital, but with conditions of alignment. Conditions like 2 board seats, full access to operational audits, a restructuring clause allowing Naomi's firm to influence C-suite retention, and a ratchet clause that would dilute existing shares if performance metrics weren't met. In short, a velvet-gloved takeover path. She didn't expect them to accept it. She expected him to choke on it. But less than 48 hours after it hit his inbox, Reed's team requested a call to discuss modifications. Not reject, not decline, discuss. Naomi showed up to the call, stone-faced, this time. Reed noticed. Well, this is surprising, he said, eyes narrowing. Naomi Chen, you were at Haltech, weren't you? She offered a neutral smile. COO, for 2 years, before the leadership shift. His jaw moved, like he wanted to rewrite history in real time, but didn't know how. I didn't realize you were behind Chen and Vega. I get that a lot. He cleared his throat. Look, the terms are assertive. Board seats, restructuring oversight. That's a lot of control for a minority investment. Naomi didn't blink. That's how we protect our capital. Sure, But some of this reads like a hostile precursor. She leaned forward, voice steady. Only if you perform poorly. There was a pause. Jared, the co-founder, muttered something about compromise and the long game. Reed exhaled slowly. Okay, look, we can agree to the performance metrics, but I need one board seat, guaranteed to remain with legacy leadership. Naomi tilted her head. You mean you? I mean stability. She made him wait. Let the silence thicken, like a closing trap. I'll need an updated cap table, she said, and a breakdown of your current investor sentiment. If we're going in, we're not going in blind. Reed hesitated, just a flicker, but he nodded. Of course, I'll have our GC send it over. Do that. She ended the call herself, then sat still in her chair for a full minute, staring out the window of her now upgraded office, one floor above Halverson's old law firm. She didn't want control just to have it. She wanted control to be inevitable. Chapter 5, The Shell Game. The term sheet was only the first step. The real game was quieter and far more lethal. While Reed was busy trying to spin the investment as a strategic collaboration to his inner circle, Naomi was making moves he couldn't see, because she wasn't just investing. She was absorbing. Reed had made one critical mistake. He assumed desperation could be compartmentalized. That he could shop for capital without sending tremors through the ground floor. But venture circles were smaller than he liked to admit, and Naomi had relationships he never bothered to notice. The moment she received the cap table, she flagged 3 names, small, early-stage investors, each with under 5% equity, silent for years, passive, tired. They'd been hoping for an acquisition that never came, a liquidity event that was now evaporating. Naomi reached out through proxies, old contacts, former founders, even a law school roommate she hadn't spoken to in 6 years. Within a week, she had terms in place. Non-voting common stock converted, minority interests transferred, quiet purchase agreements routed through 2 clean holding companies, each structured to look like independent market players. One of the original investors called her directly after signing. I always thought you were the brains behind that place, he said, voice low. Glad you're finally getting yours. Naomi didn't confirm. She just thanked him. By the end of the month, she'd secured just over 19% of voting shares. Not enough to force a takeover on paper, but enough to start whispering in the ears of the exhausted and the underwhelmed. Because Reed wasn't just failing financially. He was faltering personally. Employee churn was rising. Product delays were stacking. And founders who once idolized his charisma were quietly reaching out to Naomi's fund instead. One even left Halverson Tech to join a Chen and Vega portfolio company, a move that sent ripples through the board. Naomi didn't gloat. She updated her spreadsheet, double-checked her share purchase agreements, and prepared for the next board meeting. This one she wouldn't attend as a silent observer. She had questions, and the right to ask them. Chapter 6, Uninvited Guest. Naomi arrived early, not because she needed to, because she wanted to. The boardroom was still half-lit, sunlight diffusing through thick glass and catching on the polished table. She took a seat near the center, visible, unmissable. Not the place for an observer trying to blend in. But that wasn't who she was anymore. Her folder sat closed in front of her. No laptop, no coffee, just preparation. At 8:27, Reed Halverson walked in, mid-conversation with Jared. He was laughing as if someone had just handed him another reason to believe in his own invincibility. The moment he saw her, the sound stalled. Naomi, he said, slowing his pace. Didn't expect to see you this morning. She didn't rise, just met his gaze. I've observed enough. His eyes flicked to the others filing in behind him. Well, I suppose we'll make room for active dialogue. He meant it to sound gracious, but there was tension at the edge of his smile. Naomi didn't return it. 2 quarters earlier, Naomi's first board meeting. She'd chosen her outfit carefully. Matte gray blazer, charcoal blouse, simple black slacks. Understated, non-threatening, forgettable by design. Reed had barely glanced her way when she entered. This is Naomi Chen, Jared had said, gesturing. Observer from Chen and Vega. Ah, Reed had said, not even shaking her hand. Appreciate the support. That was it. No eye contact, no welcome. Just a practiced dismissal disguised as efficiency. The meeting started with his usual energy, slides full of inflated forecasts and polished spin. Jared, to his credit, tried to bring up a stalled product rollout, but Reed overrode him. "I'm not worried about that," he said, waving a hand. "Early adopters lag sometimes. That's not a product flaw. It's a patience problem." "But support tickets have tripled," Jared started. "Because we're scaling," Reed interrupted. "Look, if we panic every time users can't adapt, we're going to start designing for mediocrity, and that's not this company." There were nods around the room. Naomi watched them carefully, some eager, some reluctant, all complicit. Later, a board member raised a concern about burn rate. Reed smiled like a teacher indulging a naive student. "We're not burning," he said smoothly. "We're investing ahead of momentum. You don't pull oxygen from the fire just as it's catching." Naomi had written that line down in her notebook, not because it was profound, because it was bullshit. At one point, Reed gestured toward a slide showing year-over-year retention. "I mean, these numbers speak for themselves," he said. Naomi leaned slightly closer. They did speak, for attrition. The numbers showed churn, bleeding customers, but Reed framed it as market refinement. "We don't want to keep everyone," he said, with a chuckle. "Let the wrong clients go. We're not a discount brand. We're premium." No one pushed back. Naomi didn't either. Not that day. She sat still, eyes sharp, lips closed. And when Reed wrapped the meeting with a "thanks everyone, let's go build something legendary," she was already rewriting the room in her head. Now, back into present, the screen blinked through Reed's latest projections. Another round of padded forecasts. Another slide full of wishful math. Naomi slid her folder across the table. "Before we move forward," she said calmly, "I'd like to address a few discrepancies in the figures." Reed looked up. The clicker paused in his hand. "Excuse me?" She opened the folder. "Page 8 in your supplemental packet. You've listed net zero churn for Q3, but based on HR documentation, 3 senior engineers exited within the last 6 weeks. Only 1 has been replaced, and their offer letter is still under review." A beat of silence. Jared cleared his throat. "I think the replacement is still on probation," Naomi finished, "which means this forecast relies on incomplete staffing." One of the investors turned toward Reed. "Is that accurate?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Look, we're operating lean. It's not instability. It's intentional discipline." Naomi didn't blink. "Then it should be labeled accordingly." He set the clicker down. "You're an observer, Naomi. These aren't speaking rights." "I'm not speaking as an observer. I'm speaking as a representative of the firm that holds 19.4% of your voting shares," she replied. "And if this board is being misled, we're prepared to act." The room fell still. No one looked at him. They looked at her. And she looked entirely at home. Chapter 7, Pattern Recognition. Naomi didn't drive straight home after the meeting. She took the long way, looping through the old tech corridor where Halverson Tech first launched. The buildings were newer now, taller, but the memory was still buried in the sidewalks, in the crosswalk where she used to rehearse rebuttals under her breath before Monday sinks. It hit her harder than she expected. Not the nostalgia, the pattern, because Reed hadn't changed. Not really. He still filled a room with his voice before anyone else could think. Still talked in declarations instead of dialogue. Still expected people to mistake confidence for competence. And still, always, discounted quiet. Naomi had lived this before. She remembered the strategy meeting when she flagged the latency issue no one wanted to touch. Reed waved it off. 2 weeks later, it nearly tanked a client demo. He never apologized, just said, "good instincts," and moved on, like the idea had sprouted from his own mouth. She remembered the product launch, where she handled crisis management behind the scenes while Reed took the stage. She wasn't mentioned once, not in the press release, not on the investor call. "You know you're invaluable," he told her afterward, "but you don't want to seem like you're chasing credit, right?" She remembered being told to smile more during partner dinners, to hold the line when the company overhired and couldn't meet payroll. To think bigger when she questioned the inflated burn rate, the same one now eating Halverson Tech alive. And then that lunch, the final insult. Be more ambitious. As if ambition only counted when it looked like him. Naomi pulled into her building garage and sat in the car a moment longer. The city buzzed outside, glass towers gleaming under artificial light. She wasn't angry, not anymore. She was prepared. She hadn't just studied Reed. She'd mapped his rhythm, his blind spots, his tells. He didn't know how to handle nuance. He didn't prepare for quiet resistance. And he definitely didn't know how to respond when someone let him talk himself into a corner. None of it made her bitter. It made her meticulous. She knew what Reed expected from women like her: loyalty, gratitude, and silence. He didn't get any of those. What he got was a warning. And if he was smart, he'd take it. Naomi wasn't here to play politics. She was here to win. Revised Chapter 8, Voting Day. The room was colder than usual. Whether it was the air conditioning or the silence, Naomi couldn't tell. But the chill was perfect. Focused. Intentional. The board meeting started without fanfare. No small talk. No coffee jokes. Reed entered with the air of a man walking into a challenge he still believed he could spin. Jared sat 2 seats away, not making eye contact. One of the investors had joined via video call, muted, camera off. Another arrived exactly on time and offered Naomi a quiet nod before sitting down. They knew, not everything, but enough. Naomi waited until the second agenda item, executive compensation, before she moved. "I'd like to introduce a motion," she said, laying a thick folder on the table. The tabs were color-coded. The top page bore a formal heading: Motion to Initiate Executive Review and Interim Transition Protocol, Section 4.2. Reed didn't even glance at it. "This isn't on the agenda." "It doesn't have to be," Naomi said evenly. Section 4.2 allows a mid-year leadership review if initiated by a voting bloc holding 15% or more of equity representation. We exceed that threshold. He leaned back. "A review is procedural. You want to launch an audit? Fine. You don't need theatrics." She met his eyes. "It's not just a review. It's a vote of no confidence in your leadership. If it passes, the board is authorized to appoint interim control pending executive reassignment." Someone inhaled sharply across the table. Reed's smile thinned. "This is absurd." The legal counsel cleared his throat, already scanning the document. "The clause is real, rare, but legitimate, triggered by either a financial breach, operational misrepresentation, or credible shareholder concern." Naomi turned a page in her packet, revealing 3 internal communications. One showing the inflated client retention numbers, one showing delayed payments to key vendors, and one, highlighted in yellow, exposing an unapproved marketing expenditure with no signed contract. "The data supports the motion," she said, calm as glass. "And so does the law firm we hired to vet it." Reed scoffed. "She doesn't even hold a quarter of the company." "She doesn't need to," murmured one of the VCs. "She has enough to force a vote, and she has enough to win it." Reed turned toward him. "You can't be serious." The man didn't flinch. "I'm tired of being lied to." Jared shifted in his seat, visibly pale. Naomi didn't soften. "Your leadership has become a liability, Reed. This vote isn't symbolic. If passed, it initiates interim leadership appointment, immediately." Reed's voice dropped, dangerous now. "If you do this, Naomi, you don't get to come back from it." She leaned forward. "I didn't come here to come back. I came here to replace you." The legal counsel raised his eyes. "Motion is valid. Call the vote." The VC voted yes. Then the investor on video. Yes. The next abstained, shaking his head, unsure but unwilling to resist. Naomi did not vote. She didn't need to. Jared was last. He looked directly at Reed, just once, and said, "It's time." The motion passed. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Reed looked around the room like a man waking up inside his own nightmare. Naomi stood. "This meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene to initiate the interim plan. Legal has the timeline." Reed didn't move, didn't speak. Naomi walked out with the only thing Reed had never once given her: the final word. Chapter 9, The Transition. The announcement dropped at 8:59 a.m. An internal email marked "High Priority, Executive Update" hit every Halverson Tech inbox, just as employees were pouring their first coffee or unlocking their office doors. The subject line was cold, bureaucratic, and unmistakable. Leadership transition, interim appointment notification. By 9:02, Slack was chaos. At 9:04, Reed was gone. No goodbye speech, no firestorm exit. Just one final walk from the glass-walled office he'd once called the engine room of vision, past the front desk, down the elevator, and into the silence of a downtown morning that no longer belonged to him. Naomi watched from the 25th floor as his town car pulled away. She didn't flinch. He hadn't even tried to contest it, because he couldn't. The documents were airtight. The vote had triggered a provisional clause that allowed for immediate executive reassignment pending final board approval. Legal had reviewed every footnote. HR had cleared the exit package overnight. Naomi's appointment as interim CEO was temporary in name only. The vote for permanence was scheduled for next quarter, and everyone already knew how it would land. She stepped into Reed's office at 9:15 sharp. It was untouched, his name still on the glass, his signature mug on the shelf. Move fast, stay sharp. Naomi turned it around and set it face down on the credenza. Her first order of business, pull the department heads into a 10 a.m. Her second, lock down the marketing budget. Every open contract would now pass through her desk. By 10 o'clock, the room was full. Engineering leads, product managers, HR, ops. Most looked dazed. A few looked quietly relieved. Naomi didn't offer a motivational speech. She offered facts. This transition is not a disruption, she said. It's a recalibration. We will audit every active initiative for strategic integrity and spend efficiency. If it's working, it stays. If it's fluff, it goes. No theatrics, just clarity. Someone raised a hand. The head of partnerships, visible nervous. Is this permanent? Naomi didn't hesitate. It will be. The room exhaled. No one asked about Reed. No one had to. By 1 p.m., Naomi had restructured the leadership workflow, eliminated 3 non-essential contractor roles, and signed off on a new roadmap draft that had been sitting ignored in Jared's inbox for 6 weeks. She ate lunch at her desk. No team walk, no performative check-ins, just strategy. The Slack threads kept buzzing into the afternoon. One private message arrived at 2:11 p.m. from a mid-level engineer Naomi barely remembered. Didn't think I'd ever see the day. We're lucky to have you. She replied with a simple thumbs up. She didn't need praise. She had power now. And the silence it created, she intended to use it well. Chapter 10. No hard feelings. The request came through back channels, not from Reed directly, of course. That would have required a humility he never learned to fake. Instead, it arrived via a polite email from his former assistant, a woman Naomi remembered vividly for her sharp stilettos and sharper discretion. Reed would be open to connecting if you believe there's strategic alignment worth exploring. No pressure, just a courtesy. Naomi read it twice, then once more, just to admire the phrasing. Polished, vague, drenched in the unspoken desperation of a man trying not to look like he'd been locked out of his own building. She waited 3 days to respond. Not out of pettiness. Timing was everything. When she finally agreed to meet, she chose a public cafe halfway between his apartment and the office. Neutral ground, glass walls, nothing theatrical. She wore soft gray again, the same tone she'd worn during her first board meeting as an observer. She was early. He was 10 minutes late. When Reed arrived, he looked smaller. Not physically. He still had the tailored coat, the swept hair, the carefully casual watch. But something about his energy had thinned. Naomi, he said, slipping into the chair across from her. Thanks for agreeing to this. She nodded. No smile. You asked to connect. He exhaled slowly, then offered a half smile. I suppose congratulations are in order. You don't have to pretend you mean that. A beat passed. Then, like he couldn't help himself, you blindsided me. Naomi tilted her head. You're the one who handed me the exit letter 2 years ago. I just kept walking. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. I misjudged you. I know. Silence stretched again. The cafe clattered softly around them. Cups, spoons, distant typing. Reed leaned in slightly. I'd be willing to consult. On transition items, key partnerships, strategic relationships I built. Naomi didn't flinch. Why would we need that? His mouth opened, closed. You've already cut me out, he said. I did, Naomi said, cleanly. I still know things you don't. She smiled faintly. That's what every man says right before we audit the back end and find his passwords written under a desk calendar. He blinked. She let the silence land. Then she leaned forward. I'll make you an offer anyway, she said. Consultant, advisory title only. No responsibilities, no pay, no access. But it'll save face. You can say you stayed involved. I'll even let PR include your name in the transition statement. His jaw tightened. You think I'd take that? Naomi stood, smoothing her jacket. I don't care if you do. She left without another word. Chapter 11, The Rebuild. Naomi didn't start with a reorg chart. She started with a list of names. Not titles, not departments, names. People she'd remembered from her COO days, the ones who stayed late without performing loyalty, who quietly held teams together, while the idea men soaked up praise. Engineers who fixed silent bugs before they became outages. Product managers who built roadmaps while Reed made pitch decks. She made calls, private ones, one by one. No announcements, no new slogans, just, I see you, I remember what you did. I'd like you to take point on this. And they did, because when someone who never needed the spotlight suddenly had the microphone, people listened. Naomi didn't fire anyone unnecessarily. She didn't need to. The bloat revealed itself the moment the pressure changed. A VP of Innovation resigned within 2 weeks after realizing Naomi expected metrics, not mantras. A director of strategic alignment folded when asked to produce a single case study that justified her $200K salary. Naomi didn't gloat. She logged their exits, redistributed responsibilities, and elevated people who had always known the systems better anyway. 3 weeks in, the company felt different. Meetings were shorter, documentation clearer, deadlines tighter, but less theatrical. The Monday Slack all-hands thread, once a rotating carousel of curated enthusiasm, started sounding real. Not loud, just honest. One engineer, Chloe from a mid-tier architecture team, pinged Naomi directly with a small fix for a recurring permissions bug that had been deprioritized for 8 months under Reed. Naomi wrote back, "Push it. If it works, you'll present it at the QBR." Chloe didn't respond. But the bug was patched that afternoon, and Chloe showed up to the QBR with a short, clean demo and 3 insights on how to avoid the problem long-term. Naomi introduced her. No fanfare. Just, this is Chloe. She fixed a problem we stopped noticing. After the meeting, one of the junior analysts whispered, "He never let us present." Naomi heard it, didn't respond. She didn't need to say the era had changed. They were living it. The firm's burn rate dropped 14% in the first month. Customer retention rose 6%. Internal exit interviews went from vague shrugs to specific feedback. Her inbox became a source of signal, not noise. But the best moment came quietly. Late one night, as she finalized the draft for a restructuring memo, Jared knocked on her open office door. "I stayed late," he said, offering a crooked smile. "Old habits." Naomi looked up. "You all right?" He stepped in slowly. "I just wanted to say, it's better, everything. You're doing what we always said we would." She closed her laptop. "No," she said. "I'm doing what he said we couldn't." Chapter 12, Ambition Delivered. It started with a blog post, a quiet one, written by a mid-level engineer named Mika, who hadn't been part of the company's inner circle before the transition. The title was unassuming. What happens when someone actually listens? It wasn't about revenge or restructuring. It was about culture, trust, the way meetings had changed, the way ideas had started flowing in both directions. Within 2 days, it had 40,000 views. By the end of the week, Naomi's inbox was flooded with media requests. She declined most. She didn't need to narrate her rise. Her results were speaking. But when a journalist from a respected tech outlet reached out with a quiet, carefully written message, "I'm more interested in process than drama. Would you give me 20 minutes?" She agreed. They met in a quiet cafe near Naomi's office. No entourage, no PR handler. Just 2 cups of tea and a recorder between them. The journalist leaned in gently. "So what changed? You were here before. Now you're in charge. But what actually shifted?" Naomi smiled. Not warm, not cold. Just honest. "I stopped asking for space," she said, "and I started taking it." The journalist blinked. "And they let you?" "No," Naomi said. "They didn't even notice until it was already done." The piece ran under the headline, "She didn't wait to be chosen, inside the quiet coup that rescued Halverson Tech." It spread, fast. VCs reposted it with knowing emojis. Engineers added her quote to LinkedIn banners. Quiet leaders, the ones who rarely made keynote stages, started calling her a blueprint. She ignored most of it. Politely. Her team was rebuilding core infrastructure. Her calendar was full of deep dives and ops reviews, but every now and then, she'd catch her name tagged beside words like visionary or executive force. The irony wasn't lost on her, because once she'd been told to dream bigger. Now, she had remade the dream itself, and people were finally watching the right person wake up in it. Epilogue, the plaque. The office didn't look like Reed's anymore. The mug was gone. The oversized monitor had been replaced with a slimmer dual-screen setup. The accent wall, once navy and gold, was now a soft matte charcoal, neutral, grounded. Everything in the space spoke in Naomi's tone. Clean lines, clarity, intention. On the shelf behind her desk, a small cluster of framed photos sat in a minimalist row. Her parents in front of their restaurant, a snapshot of her first investor pitch, a Polaroid of Chloe and Mika high-fiving in the break room after the QBR, and beside them, one frame that looked different. Simple black, no photo, just text. Inside it, centered and crisp, was the handwritten card she'd been handed 2 years ago. Naomi, never doubt your talent. Just don't be afraid to dream bigger. You're capable of more. Be bold. Be ambitious. Read. She'd folded it that day and slipped it into her bag without a word. Not because she couldn't respond, but because she knew the best reply would never be spoken. It would be built. Now, beneath the original card, a new engraved plate had been added. Signed, Naomi Chen, CEO. She didn't show it to visitors. She didn't mention it in interviews. It wasn't for the world. It was for her. Because ambition wasn't about noise. It wasn't a performance. It was a choice. Quiet, sharp, undeniable. And she'd made it. Every step of the way.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.